Hi guys, this is Wave618. Alright, so today we're going to do a video explaining all about blockchain. So it's a very important technology to understand if you're going to be trading any of the cryptocurrencies. Obviously a lot of you have heard about Bitcoin. It's what's trending at the moment in the markets, but I do believe it is important to understand the fundamentals, purely because if you're going to have any confidence in your trade, you need to have some idea of what you can expect from the underlying asset. As you'll know from watching my videos, I always talk about technical analysis. It's technical analysis that I use to time my entries and exits. However, in order to determine which asset class I'm going to trade, I will use fundamentals. So obviously Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies are in their infancy, so they're not well established assets. It's hard to know their true value right now. It's hard to know whether they've been through a bubble or whether we can expect the trend over the last few years to continue or not. So that's where the fundamentals come in. Now I'm going to talk all about blockchain in this video. So there's quite a few annotations in front of you that you can see, and don't try and decipher it just now. I'm going to go through each and every part of it in detail. So first of all, so what is blockchain? So blockchain is essentially it's a list of transactions of a particular asset. And it's essentially a receipt of every transaction that's ever happened, and and it's all stored online. So one important concept to know about blockchain is the fact that it's not one entity, it's a technology in itself. So different assets will have their own blockchain. For example, Bitcoin will have its own blockchain, which will be different to the blockchain of other cryptocurrencies. So the Bitcoin blockchain is essentially a list of all the transactions that have ever happened in Bitcoin. And that's literally every single transaction that's happened. So that's the first thing to understand. Now, why was it created in the first place? So what purpose does it serve? So I'll explain right now. So the reason for its introduction was to act as a system for trust and verification whilst performing a transaction. So it's ensuring that you know that the person that you're doing the transaction with is trustworthy, and the product or any agreement that you're coming to is legitimate, and it's not some kind of a scam or any counterfeit good that you may be purchasing. So that's the main agenda behind blockchain. It's trying to create that trust and verification, and any service that uses blockchain, you can then be reassured that it is a trustworthy source. Now, how do they establish this trust and verification? Now, the main way is through a system of what they call decentralization, and many steps of verification that are done with every single transaction. So just at the bottom here, you can see what I mean by decentralization. So, well, first of all, let's talk about a centralized organization. So if you can imagine a bank, for example, being at the center, and then all transactions around the bank are done separately and not between the individual parties, but so the bank always acts as the middleman, which this does lead to an element of it can lead to problems, because the database is all stored with the bank. So if any problem goes on with the bank, then it affects everyone. So if there's any fraud within the bank, any scam, any hacker that's got in, it affects everyone. Whilst with a decentralized system, if any one person, first of all the information of the blockchain is shared amongst everyone publicly. It's all completely public. Now, if the record is incorrect in any one storage area amongst all these people that are sharing the database, then it will get recognized, and not only will it get recognized, but it'll be recognized before the transaction has been verified. Yeah. So it prevents it from spreading. It gets caught out early on, prevents it from spreading. So a hacker can't target one central body. Yeah, because the information is shared amongst everyone, the hacker cannot target one entity, which makes it very, very difficult to hack into unless you hack into the whole system altogether. So that's the decentralized aspect of it. Now, what are these different representative bodies here? These are essentially nodes. So nodes act as a means of storing the blockchain, and the blockchain is, as I say, a list of transactions, and they verify that each transaction is legitimate. So I'm just going to explain how each transaction is done and how it is confirmed and how it is verified. So let's say, for example, T1 stands for transaction 1, T2 is transaction 2, and T3 is transaction 3. Now, each transaction is someone buying or selling Bitcoin. Yeah. So what happens whenever a transaction is made? A miner, is essentially a powerful computer that will verify that the transaction is legitimate. So it looks at whether the Bitcoin being sold is legitimate, and it confirms that the transaction is done in a correct manner. When it fills out that transaction, it gives it what we call a hash code, and that hash code is a 32-character code that will then act as the identity for that transaction. Yeah. Now, when the next transaction is performed by the miner, it gets given a new hash code. But the interesting thing is the hash code here part of it will include part of the hash code from the preceding transaction. Therefore, a sequence is developed. Yeah. So this hash code can only be created with knowledge of this hash code. Yeah. And for that reason, a sequence is created whereby these hash codes can only go in a certain order, and the order can't be changed or edited in any way. Now, the means by which these hash codes are created, it's using something called cryptography, which is essentially the study of code. It uses mathematical equations to come up with these hash codes, and as I say, it requires powerful computers to come up with this. And these powerful computers are what we call the miners. So the miners are verifying these transactions, creating a sequence, and then once a sequence is created, it forms what we call a block. Yeah. Now, I've just done 3 transactions here, but obviously there can be many, many transactions. This is just a very simplified diagram. So once you get your long sequence of transactions, all with sequential hash codes, you get a block, and that block itself is also given a hash code. So what happens then, once a block is formed, it gets shared amongst all the nodes, that basically anyone who has access to the database of let's just use Bitcoin for this example, the Bitcoin blockchain. This will then get sent to every single node, and they will verify that the hash code for the block is relevant to the preceding block's hash code. So let's say, for example, block 2 has just been created, and the nodes check that the hash code is in sequence with the preceding block's hash code, and that way they can verify that the block is legitimate, and it'll be recognized by all the nodes, and they have a voting system. If at least 51% of the nodes accept the transaction or the addition of the block to the blockchain as being legitimate, then it will be added on, and that will be the verification process. So that's essentially keeps happening again and again until you get these blocks joining on, and they call this a blockchain because there's obviously this chain of blocks forming in a sequential pattern, and the pattern can never be broken because of these hash codes, including part of the preceding hash code, and they've been through this mathematical equation that has been verified by all other parties. It therefore creates a lot of security in knowing that it's been carefully cross-examined and very difficult to hack into and create incorrect transactions. So that's the idea behind it. That's how you get this sequence of blocks. Now, a lot of people get a little bit confused about who miners are and who nodes are. First of all, anyone can be a miner or a node. Essentially, a miner is someone with a computer that is generally powerful. It is an expensive process to do these mathematical equations and confirm these transactions are legitimate. But essentially, the miner has a computer that is able to do that. And yeah, for every block that is verified that they add to the blockchain, they get paid essentially. They get given a token. So in the case of Bitcoin, they'll get paid in Bitcoin. Yeah, for every block that they make, they'll get a Bitcoin. So that's what they're getting in return for all their hard work, all the power, the computer's expenses that goes into the work of doing those mathematical formulas. They call it proof of work. So in return for the work that they've done, they get the reward, which is a token, and in the case of Bitcoin, that token is Bitcoin. So that's what a miner does. Now, miners obviously need access to the blockchain because they need to know what the preceding block hash code was in order to create the new block's hash code. Yeah, so they need constant access to the blockchain. Now, nodes are what stores the blockchain. Yeah, so the nodes are these network of stores of the blockchain which connect through the internet. So every time they're online, they will automatically share their up-to-date content. And yeah, so miners, usually every miner will have their own node built in, but they don't have to. And the nodes are exactly that, in that they have this database of the blockchain, and they verify that the blocks are up to, in sequence. Yeah, so this is how it works. It's these network of nodes that verify each block, and each block is verified by the miner, and the miner, for doing that work, will get paid in Bitcoin. Yeah, that's how the system works. And yeah, so that's pretty much, in a nutshell, how I would explain it. Now, I'm sure a lot of questions arise when I'm explaining this, and I'm sure you're wondering if there's room for error, and I'm sure blockchain will find its problems at some point, but I would have thought that they will find ways to tackle these issues as well. It's been around for several years now, and as you can see, that it's caught on quite dramatically, particularly with Bitcoin. But there's a lot of other applications other than Bitcoin for which blockchain can be used. So I'll just give an example actually to explain one application. So let's say, for example, you want to go to a sports event and you want to buy a ticket online. So let's just say someone from, let's say, California is traveling to the UK. They want to watch Manchester United. So they decide that because tickets often sell out fast, they're going to buy the ticket in advance. So they look to buy it online. But unfortunately, the Manchester United website is saying that the tickets are sold out. So then they look for some other online platform where they can buy the ticket from some kind of third party. Now, this is where trust comes into play. How can you trust that the person that you're buying the ticket from is legitimate? How do you know they're not selling something counterfeit to you? So that's where blockchain comes in. So let's say there's this new app that's out, and what the app will do, if that's registered with blockchain, any transaction that's made will be done through using blockchain. So they'll be able to verify that any ticket on there that is being sold is Well, also Manchester United will have to be on the blockchain as well. So they'll be able to verify that any ticket that has been sold legitimately in the first place from the Manchester United website, they'll be able to verify that the ticket is legitimate and not a counterfeit using blockchain, because blockchain, you're able to is a public it's a public database. Yeah, so that app can then check that the ticket is legitimate, and that way you know that if you're using a platform that uses blockchain technology, you know that the item that you're getting is legitimate. Yeah, so that's essentially how it works. So through the idea of a network that is decentralized with multiple verification steps, you know that what you're purchasing or what you're trading is legitimate and you're not getting cheated. Yeah, nowadays a lot of transactions are made online, and that's why this technology is becoming very popular. All right, now what I also want to add in this video is the fact that it's very interesting that if you go on any bank website and you actually type in blockchain technology or blockchain, just type in any big bank, JP Morgan, Credit Suisse, whatever, and then just type blockchain, they'll have information about blockchain. Yeah, and they'll actually talk about it very, very favorably. They'll talk about it in a very positive way, in the sense that it adds verification, which I think is very interesting indeed, because if you think about it, most of the things that use blockchain technology are currencies or cryptocurrencies and other means of acquiring goods, whatever kind of currency it is, and these are essentially putting the banks at risk. You could argue that they could put the banks out of business, because you're no longer depending on a bank to make a transaction. This is the idea of trading with people independently of any central body, and no longer using any middleman such as a bank or an organization. So it's very interesting that they would be promoting this, when essentially it sounds like they'll be stabbing themselves in the foot by promoting such an organization. So that makes me think the only way I can get my head around it is that the banks have recognized that this kind of technology is required in the future, and I would have thought that they're the ones who have created it, and they're the ones who are heavily invested in it at the moment, and so that's why they're promoting it. That's the only way I can understand this. That's the only way I can understand why a bank would promote this technology. And now, the interesting thing about that is, if the banks are behind it, you can be pretty rest assured that it's going to succeed. There's no doubt about it. So yeah, I think that's just some food for thought. But it's very interesting. No matter which bank website you go on, they all promote it very positively, and it just makes you wonder. Well, not wonder, but for me, I'm quite convinced that they are in on this. If you think about it, banks are the most vulnerable to any cyber hack. Yeah, wherever there's a lot of money or a lot of power, for example, within government or in the banks, they are the most vulnerable to these cyber attacks. So if they're the most vulnerable, they're also going to be leading the race to learn about how to defend themselves against cyber attacks. And it sounds like blockchain is a system that can prevent that. So it all makes sense to me in the fact that the banks have come up with this concept of verification, and then they're promoting it on their websites. They're very public about it, despite the fact that you would have thought that the development of any cryptocurrency would be at the detriment to the banks. So very, very interesting, and the only way I can make sense of it all is if the banks are heavily invested in these currencies themselves, and for that reason you can expect them to succeed. So yeah, that's just something to think about. That's my theory. I'm sure you can a lot of you may disagree, but it's just something to think about. Another thing I will add, there's something called smart contracts as well. So what a smart contract will do, it will use more than one blockchain. For example, in the example of the concert tickets, you'll have to have the tickets on one blockchain and then the payment process on the other blockchain. For example, if the tickets are bought, let's say in Bitcoin, so what will happen is the app that you're using to buy the tickets, they will look at the blockchain for the tickets, verify that the ticket is legitimate, then they will look at the blockchain simultaneously for the payment system, verify that that's done legitimately as well. So it's essentially combining two blockchains, and that is essentially what a smart contract performs. It's ensuring that more than one criteria is being met. Yeah, and once the criteria is met, the transaction is enforced. So, and one cryptocurrency that is particularly using such smart contracts is something it's Ethereum. Yeah, I'm sure you've heard about it. It's doing very well. I think it's a very interesting system. There are other smart contracts, cryptocurrencies, for example Neo, which is another very exciting cryptocurrency. But these smart contracts, I can see a lot of utilization for these cryptocurrencies, and identification as well, personalized ID, verifying that someone is who they say they are, is another aspect for this blockchain verification process. So yeah, there's a lot of the cryptocurrencies looking at that as well. So anyway, I'll wrap it up there, guys. I'm sure the video is becoming a bit longer than expected now. So reason I created the video is I found on YouTube, on the internet in general, a lot of complex explanations as to what blockchain is. Now I'm hoping I've simplified it. I'll have to watch it back myself to see if it is simple, but I'm hoping that it's made it a bit more simple for you. I've hoped that understanding the fundamentals now, it allows you to trade these cryptocurrencies with more confidence. But check out my videos. I'll be closely analyzing Bitcoin in particular, but also other cryptocurrencies of interest, and because I think they have a very bright future ahead. I do believe this technology will be revolutionary. At present time, we're in very much the pilot stage of blockchain. It's been piloted out to lots of organizations, and it will only be at the stage where we see that these pilots are performing better than their counterparts that the real blockchain technology will establish its value. So once we see that people are all running towards these organizations that have applied blockchain, that's when blockchain will really start to show its value. At the moment, Bitcoin and all of the cryptocurrencies, they've gone up based on market hysteria, and that's why they've crashed very sharply. As soon as blockchain becomes widely incorporated within society, that's when true value will be brought into the market, and you won't see these sharp pullbacks like we've seen over the last few months. So alright, I'll leave it at that, guys. I hope you've enjoyed the content. If you want to hear more from me, please like, subscribe and share, and alright, take care, guys.